Testing. Testing. Testing, testing. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to live stream this into Facebook. So hold on 1 minute while I figure that out. But thank you to those who are all on time. My goodness, 4 of you on here. Let's see if this will work. Okay. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to do a little comment to everyone. I'm just going to try to live stream this to Facebook for the first time. So I'm going to see if it works. But welcome to the welcome to the welcome webinar. Okay, let's see if this is working. Oh, I think it's what says go live. Okay. The webinar is being live streamed. Awesome. Got it. Okay. Welcome. It looks like we have some people coming on. If anyone would like to let me know and let everyone else know in the comments in the chat where you're from. If you don't have that permission to, you should be, or maybe put it in the Q&A and that'll let me know. Oh, Abby from Pittsburgh, welcome. I am in the Seattle, Washington area. So it's about 4 o'clock my time. I think it's around almost 7 o'clock in Pittsburgh. Where's everyone else from? I know we had a few people from the West Coast as well. Oh, Toronto, awesome. Another Pennsylvania and Sumner, Washington. Hi. So I'm from Washington State. Whenever I hear Sumner, I think of this ad on the radio, if those of you who are listening to the radio, where they talked about Sunset Chevrolet in Sumner. It's a very, very fun. Oh, hi. And Priyanka is here from Boston. Hi. So I'm trying something I've never tried before. So I apologize if I don't do it correctly, but I am trying to I'm live streaming this on Facebook and Zoom at the same time. So a lot of you signed up for this from my email list, but I also made a Facebook event. So far it seems like it's going well. I can see the comments. Hi, Priyanka. And this is awesome. I don't know how old all of you are, but I'm old enough to remember the time before we had the technology to do this. I remember when you had to, dial long distance and spend a bunch of money just to call someone a couple hours away. So this is really exciting to me that we can all talk. And Claire from Ireland, hi, welcome. You're one of my Facebook friends. I mean, my Instagram friends. So it's awesome to see you all. Welcome to everyone who's just coming on. You guys are all, I'm trying not to say guys, sorry. You people are all nice and early today. That's awesome. So I'm loved hearing where you're from. And, this is meant to be, like I think I mentioned before in my little marketing materials, but meant to be kind of a nice mixture of like information, but also just some encouragement and support. And, I'm happy to try to answer any questions you have. I might not have all the answers, but I do my best to at least give you a little direction to go in if I don't have the answers quite yet. So hi, Lori from Pasadena. Welcome. Awesome. And when I hear Pasadena, I think the little old lady from Pasadena. So that's kind of fun. So right now, I don't think anyone has like the quote unquote permissions to unmute themselves. I'm thinking about if you would like to, ask a question and you're in the Zoom right now, you can, raise your digital hand and I can call on you and allow you to unmute yourself, or you can put it in the chat. The chat's probably easiest because sometimes it allows me to kind of multitask a little bit. So hi, Priya. So we've got Priyanka on the Facebook Live. It looks kind of like it's frozen to me, but I think that's okay. I think it's just what it looks like to me. So I'm 14 people now. Hi, welcome new people. So if you're just coming on, if you have the ability to put in the chat where you're from, that would be great. We have Ireland represented. I don't know what time it is in Ireland. I think it's almost midnight, must be. Pasadena, California, a few Washingtonians like me, got some people from Pennsylvania, Toronto, more Boston, Puerto Rico. Oh my gosh, welcome. So we got 4 different countries, US. No, obviously Puerto Rico is part of the US, but we have Canada and I keep wanting to say Italy, Ireland. Okay, 12 a.m. Oh my gosh, Claire, amazing. And Boise, Idaho, another West Coaster. I'm so sorry. I'm a huge Lin-Manuel Miranda fan, so I almost butchered that. Where it's not a country. Puerto Rico is part of the United States. And then Bloomington, Indiana. So we got the Midwest also. Hi. All right. So I am going to just get started. Oh, another Indiana. Wow. Awesome. And I have some slides here that I'll be sharing, and hopefully you'll still see me in this little bubble. Let me know if you don't see my face as I'm talking here. But so this is the Welcome to Rheumatoid Arthritis Tips for Navigating Your New Normal. And I did have a lot of people ask me before this, well, what if I'm not like super newly diagnosed? And this is open for anyone who just has any questions about rheumatoid arthritis. I've always thought literally I've always dreamed about doing this, like a way to kind of have a welcoming phone call / video call to just have a friendly face, someone who kind of understands a little bit of what you're going through. And so, but it's not just for it's not like a cutoff, like you have to have been diagnosed in the last 6 months. Otherwise, I'm not going to answer your question. It's not that formal. So I'm just going to open the other window here. And so you are in the right place if you have any sort of rheumatic disease. A lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about, especially with like coping skills, that really relates whether you have rheumatoid arthritis or another form of a rheumatic disease like psoriatic arthritis, that's PSA, or ankylosing spondylitis, that's AS. And also, if you're confused or overwhelmed, that's a very, very common emotion to feel in the beginning stages, especially. But honestly, it comes in waves, even if you've had it for years. I'll explain to you a little more of my story too. And you're in the right place if you're just trying to cope with this and feel maybe like you're a little bit alone. Hopefully, even just in the course of an hour, you'll feel a little bit less alone. That's definitely one of my main goals with this. So I'm just going to give you a quick idea of our overview of what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to start off with a very brief introduction, and Rheumatoid Arthritis 101. I thought everyone got a pamphlet after they're diagnosed, but actually I found out that not even everyone gets like a little trifold pamphlet. Actually, just put in the chat pamphlet if you were given a pamphlet after your diagnosis. I'm just curious because a lot of people say, the reason I'm doing this is a lot of people say they don't feel like they have enough information about rheumatoid arthritis. And I thought everyone, again, just gets the pamphlet, and it turns out a lot of people don't even get a pamphlet. Yes. Okay. We have one pamphlet and one nada. I'm noticing now on the Facebook that it's automatically, I didn't realize it was going to do this. It's actually nice. It's giving a little transcription of what I'm saying. And you got directed to rheuminfo.com. There are some great websites for information. It's just, I don't know. There's something to be said for just talking to another human being, someone who could just answer your specific questions. So I'm sorry, Julie, you got nothing. We need to do better for our patients. So I'm going to give some words of just general encouragement and tips for navigating your new normal, some specifics. I always, if those of you who've been to some of my webinars before, I always try to cram in a lot of information into 60 minutes. So I think I have about 60 slides. So I will talk fast, but you will all get a recording of this so that you can go through it again and maybe like pause it or ask me any follow-up questions. So what? I mean, I think it's kind of obvious, why are we even doing this? Because if you have information, and why should you kind of have tools to navigate your new normal? Well, because it'll help you improve your quality of life and well-being. And basically, one of my little taglines in my life after living with rheumatoid arthritis for 19 years is trying to figure out how to love my life and build a great life, even with rheumatoid arthritis or despite it, because I'll explain a little bit more later that philosophy, rather than just saying I have to beat rheumatoid arthritis, or I have to like make it go away or heal it or cure it. I kind of said, okay, can I live alongside this? Because it may be cured or healed in my lifetime, but it may not. And so there's a lot of benefit to coping with the moment and figuring out ways to still have a good life. So, okay, a little more about me. This is my wonderful puppy, Teddy. It's a very important part of my life. And you already told me where you're from, but if anyone didn't say already in the chat here, either on Facebook, where I'm live streaming this, or Zoom, let me know where you're from. I'm from Seattle, Washington, but I've lived in upstate New York and the San Francisco Bay Area. Hello, Lizzie from Orlando. Oh, I really want to go to Disney World when it's a little safer to go there. Yeah, so I've had rheumatoid arthritis for 19 years. I just turned 40 a couple weeks ago, and I got diagnosed right before my 22nd birthday. I figured this, or 21st birthday. There it was. Yeah, 21st birthday. I can do math. Oh, and someone has a Peaky. Oh, it's like a Pekingese named Teddy also. That's wonderful. And hi from Charlotte, and then originally from Michigan. Awesome. And I have a master's in occupational therapy, which I got after my initial, my diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis, about 6 years after. And the way I like to describe occupational therapy is it's really like a life skills specialist. Like we help people with injuries or disabilities or just any sort of chronic condition function in their day-to-day life. All the minutiae, like small things, like how do you do buttons when your hands hurt from arthritis, but also the bigger things, like how can we emotionally adjust and cope with our conditions. So that's one of the things I love about it. We see the big picture and we see the small picture kind of simultaneously. So hi, Leslie from New York. Awesome. And I also am a mom of a 7-year-old. I'm also a wife. My mom was like, aren't you going to put in there that you're not just a mom, you're also married? I'm like, yeah, I guess I put this in priority order: dog, mom, and then mom of a human, and then wife. No, just kidding. That's just subliminal. And then I founded Arthritis Life a couple years ago before the pandemic, thinking that I wanted to make like educational and empowering patient education content. And I didn't, realize how many things would take off during the pandemic in terms of ease of doing things like this, like webinars and everything. So it's been really, really fun. At first, I thought it was going to be more like a YouTube channel, but it's evolved a lot. So hello from Antofagasta, Chile, and you're an OT also. Okay, thank you so much for sharing. Wow, we have definitely an international group today. So you have osteoarthritis in both your thumbs. That is a difficult one. Thumbs, you don't realize how much you use your thumbs until they're hurting. So so just so you know, some of the stuff I'm talking about today relates to a support group that I run online called Room to Thrive, which I am going to be explaining a little bit more in the end. But today, talking about that initial adjustment period, getting organized, getting your footing and adjusting to your new normal, it kind of has to do with the inner world aspect of my Thrive framework and the executive functions. So I'll explain that a little bit more later. So just again to explain why is it hard to adjust to rheumatoid arthritis? You know, why can't everyone just get a diagnosis and then just be like, no big deal? Well, of course, there's a lot of information to learn and there's a ton of unknowns. I think that's the trend that I've noticed the most, is that the unknowns are what stress people out. And I'm definitely the same way, not knowing, you know, is this medication going to work? Is it going to get better? Is it going to get worse? And then the social effects. I'd love to hear in the chat if you've ever had difficulty like explaining what rheumatoid arthritis is to friends or family, you know, or coworkers. A lot of people say things like, well, I said I have rheumatoid arthritis and they said, oh yeah, I know what that's like because my knee hurts sometimes. Or, you know, that's not that big of a deal. It's just arthritis. So that can be a big barrier to happiness. And also, you know, worries about how it's going to affect your job, the financial aspect. These medications for rheumatoid arthritis can be really expensive. It can be difficult to understand from your medical team. I'm not just going to dwell on these negatives. I'm just explaining why, and I'm hopefully normalizing why people do need more support, like, you know, why I'm doing this. And it can be confusing. The medical jargon, you know, having to learn all these terms all of a sudden. Yes. And Paula said, you know, you're 26 and people keep saying you're too young. I had that too when I was diagnosed at 21. Or you don't look sick. You look fine. You can't really be sick. So those are really, really common and they can be really frustrating. And they might be saying, oh, you're too young, thinking that they're just like surprised looking at you. They just are having a moment of like cognitive dissonance, but sometimes it can feel like they're undermining you. Like they don't really believe you. Like, do you really have this? You're too young. You can't really have this, right? So the other thing that I just want to acknowledge is that a lot of people have medical trauma from delays in their diagnosis, from being told you're not really sick, because the average length of diagnosis for someone with an autoimmune condition in general is like 4 to 5 years from your first appointment to when you finally get your diagnosis. So in those in-between years, a lot of times people are told you're not sick, you're a hypochondriac, nothing's wrong with you, you're just anxious. And that was definitely a big part of my story as well. Yeah. And it's lengthy, having to have lengthy conversations with family and friends, like Maria's saying. And yeah, you don't look sick, or my dad has arthritis. There's a lot of confusion just about the word arthritis, because osteoarthritis is, as we're going to talk about a little bit more, a lot. It can be very painful, but it's not as systemic and doesn't have as severe of an effect for most people's quality of life as rheumatoid. Yeah, so I'm hearing people say in the comments that they've experienced a lot of this. Yeah, and Tiffany's saying, I love using rheumatic disease instead of rheumatoid arthritis. Absolutely, yeah. Yes, in my Room to Thrive program and the RA roadmap, I put a whole section under social life and relationships. We talk about what are different ways to explain what rheumatoid arthritis is. You could say rheumatoid disease. You can say I have an autoimmune disease. You can say I have a rheumatic disease. You know, Hagen says, and then yeah, if you have psoriatic, very few people know what it is, or they might just think, oh, it's psoriasis, you know, and maybe like one joint hurts or something. Yeah. And struggling with feeling fine one day and not the next. That for me is that uncertainty of how you're going to feel each day. There's a famous quote by Lady Gaga, who has fibromyalgia, you know, saying, you know, it's no joke. Chronic pain is no joke. You know, it's waking up each day not knowing how you're going to feel. Yeah. And I'm sorry, Deidre, you had symptoms for 30 years. That is a long time. But what's interesting is, what if no one in the comments was actually mentioned something yet, and I haven't even mentioned it yet, the actual physical symptoms. I'm laughing, it's kind of gallows humor, but it's like, these diseases are hard enough just in the social effects and the psychological effects, but of course they're also sometimes hard physically, might have different kinds of pain. I have to say, like, I'm a licensed health professional in Washington State as an occupational therapist. I still have a hard time explaining in exact words my pain. It's very, very hard to put words to pain. So if you have a hard time with that, you're not alone. And if you don't have a hard time with that, I would love to know your secret, because, I can definitely give you ideas on like different vocabulary to use, sharp versus stabbing versus dull. But then I still find it very hard if I'm asked on a scale of 1 to 10, because it just doesn't seem, it just seems like kind of like asking, what kind of love is the sky or something, or like, what color is love? Like, I don't know. It just doesn't, it's very difficult. So yeah. And the fatigue, yes, is very hard to explain, especially because, it can be, you can have, I'll just put it in very simple terms. For me, I've had times of mental fatigue, but not quote unquote physical fatigue, meaning kind of like my mind is really tired and overwhelmed, but like my body, I feel like I could, if I needed to go like walk a few miles or go up and down the stairs, like I wouldn't physically collapse of exhaustion. I'm just mentally so foggy and tired, versus you can have the opposite, where like your body is totally dragging and your brain is like totally awake, so it's very difficult. Yeah. And Claire, you have a very unique perspective, having cerebral palsy plus rheumatoid arthritis, and it's hard. Other things that can be obviously challenging are the extra articular symptoms, which mean non-joint symptoms, which we'll talk about, and then coping with side effects. So again, I have some quotes here, people saying it's hard to pay attention to your own needs while still being a good friend, partner, community member, and, having a hard time feeling like people in your life may not understand what it is or don't think it's a big deal. And then they'll say, just like some of you said in the comments, oh, they said, my foot hurts too, just get over it. And and then Leslie, you got diagnosed, you were feeling like you're coming down with a cold or flu, a whole body ache, not just your joints. Yes, that is common during a flare up. I mean, the goal is to not have that be your baseline state all the time, but initially when your disease is not under control, yes. Yeah. So, I'm just going to teach really quickly, because I'm going to review some of the stuff you can find in those like quote unquote pamphlets and other websites, but sometimes it's just, again, fun, helpful to have someone explain it to you like in real time. And this is of course my own little personal flair on it. So I did these little, excuse me, I did these pictures in Canva. So what does the word arthritis mean? Arthro is joint, and then itis is inflammation. So yeah, and I made the fire is the flare up. So basically arthritis is just any inflammation in a joint. So technically, osteoarthritis is bone on bone. Oh, I'm already jumping ahead. But yeah, in rheumatoid arthritis is where the immune cells themselves from your immune system decide that your synovial lining, which is the lubricating fluid inside your joint, your immune system decides, I'm going to attack that. That's bad. That's a foreign invader. That's like a virus. And so these little misguided immune cells, I like to think of them as just like little toddlers that are just, don't worry, I got this, because it's kind of more fun than thinking about like my body's revolting against itself. So whatever, choose your own metaphor. But yeah, never seen it look so adorable. Yeah. Again, this is not forced positivity. This is just me. This is just my brain. So, because I don't believe in forced positivity, but yeah. So, the immune cells are like, oh, I'm going to go get it. I'm going to go get the virus, which actually there's no virus. It's just your synovial fluid, but your immune system has mistakenly decided that that's bad. So yeah. And so initially it doesn't actually directly cause the bone or cartilage to wear down, but over time, the swelling from the inflammation causes like friction, like physics wise. And I got basically a C in physics. So don't, I can't give that big of an explanation, but just imagine it's like the fluid is usually your bones can move around in the fluid a little bit. Like it's like, if it's just your knee, it's like, doot, doot. But then when there's all this inflammation swelling, then that creates a thicker environment, not as easy to glide and move around. And then that wears down on the cartilage and the bone. So that's if you don't control the inflammation. Okay. So there are over 100 different quote unquote kinds of arthritis. The Arthritis Foundation is a nonprofit. I just noticed that they were doing a live earlier and they have some great like graphics and information on their website about the 100 different kinds of arthritis. When we say kinds, it really just means 100 different conditions can cause arthritis or cause joint inflammation. So the shorthand word arthritis is not in and of itself a condition, but psoriatic arthritis is a health condition. Rheumatoid arthritis is a health condition. Osteoarthritis. So let me know if that makes sense. So, and then you can divide them into different, what they're caused by. So rheumatoid, psoriatic, ankylosing spondylitis are caused by this autoimmune or autoinflammatory process. Whereas osteo is a mechanical process, either wear and tear over time or injury. And it's also known as mechanical. It's really the physics of your weight of your body, and it doesn't only happen if you're overweight. It can happen, to anyone, but it's known as like a mechanical process. Whereas with an autoimmune, you didn't really you don't always necessarily have any control over it. It could just be like, you get a virus and then your immune system goes haywire or genetic predisposition. No one knows exactly what causes these conditions, just FYI. There is some heritability for ankylosing spondylitis. There's some genes that are very highly associated with it. But just for the record, I'm going to tell you all, for real, I had rheumatoid arthritis for 6 years before I realized that lack of energy or fatigue was actually from rheumatoid arthritis. I thought it was just from maybe like a medication side effect, but the condition itself can cause fatigue. Like we talked about earlier, fatigue is like a vague word that can describe a sense of mental or physical or both kind of exhaustion. And the theory for that is it's like literally neuroinflammation or brain inflammation from the inflammation in your joints kind of traveling. One of the talks I went to, like as a learner, was made a big point to say that inflammation doesn't like to stay in one place. So if you have inflammation in your joints, it can actually, kind of travel up into different parts of your body. You also can have fevers as a systemic effect of rheumatoid arthritis and other rheumatic diseases. Sweating, poor appetite, weight loss. Those were two of my big symptoms initially, and dry eyes. I only had one joint that hurt initially, so that was a big delay for my diagnosis. But I eventually got it. And then heart or lung problems. And then of course, so not surprisingly, people who have this are at greater risk of depression or anxiety. And how is weight loss a symptom? Well, interestingly, I went down the rabbit hole to figure that out. No one explained it to me at the time. There's something called rheumatoid cachexia. I'll put it in the chat so you can look it up. Cachexia. It's muscle wasting due to uncontrolled inflammation. Not everyone gets it. Some people have a period of where they're gaining weight before. It's just, but it occurs often enough that it's considered a symptom. And I don't know why poor appetite is a symptom other than that there is a link between, the gut and the immune system. So a couple just quick, I know, because I have so much to tell you. A few pieces of lingo that you're going to want to know about if you're just newly diagnosed. Flare up there's no one universal definition of what a flare up is. But when people say that they're flaring up or they're having a flare up, or sometimes they just say a flare, it means just a period of time when you feel worse than your baseline. So it could be, some people use it as like, oh, I'm just flaring up today. Like today's a little bit worse than usual. Or other times, like when I'm talking to my doctor about it at this point, because I've had it for 19 years, we look at like, is there a trend over time that like over a period of weeks or months? Because that could be a signal for us that my medications maybe aren't working as well as they used to. And then a remission, this is defined a couple different ways depending on who you talk to, but it's a period where you have either no symptoms or minimal symptoms. So that's where people define it differently. Some say no symptoms, meaning no subjective report of symptoms. Like you don't say to your doctor, I feel pain or I feel fatigued, and or minimal symptoms. And then also they don't feel joint swelling in your fingers or toes or anywhere else. So the typical pattern historically has been fluctuations between flare-ups and remissions. the goal with medications and some of the other lifestyle factors that can help are to control that, so you're not having as many flare-ups and remissions. And technically, I hate to say this, but I think it's important to just know, because it's the truth, that rheumatoid arthritis is a progressive disease, which means it will get worse for most people over time unless the disease is stopped. However, the good news is that there's some really good medications. I sound like I'm not a drug company person. I'm just telling you that's like the reality. It's changed the prognosis significantly, the modern medications that are available. But the not good news is that they don't always work for everyone. And sometimes your insurance doesn't want to cover them because they're expensive and they can have side effects. But the good news is also, back to the good news, that there are more treatments now than ever, and the prognosis has never been better. And it's not just me saying that. I'm going to skip ahead to this slide, then go back. That, back in the 70s and 80s, there were no methods to prevent or stop joint damage. There was just methods for a little bit of pain control. But between the late 80s and 90s, the disease-modifying anti-rheumatic agents and biologics came out. And according to the Rheumatology Journal in 2012, current therapy for RA is such that progression from symptom onset to significant disability is now no longer inevitable. Fancy way of saying you don't have to assume that RA is going to progress to significant disability. And RA patients can anticipate comfortable and productive lives on medical therapy. That's from a doctor. And then just very, very brief basics on medications. The disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drugs are ones that directly slow down the disease progression, along with the biologic response modifiers, sometimes called biologic DMARDs, or more often just called biologics. And then the ones that address symptoms like pain or a little bit of inflammation would be non-steroidal anti-inflammatories or steroids or corticosteroids. Some people ask, they tend to feel when you get put on prednisone, a lot of people feel great, like they feel amazing. I don't know about you, because when I've ever been put on prednisone, not very often, but when I have, it's like, I feel like I want to clean everything in my house, and I have so much energy and I can't really sleep, and I feel a little bit jittery and on edge, but also kind of good in a weird way. But the reason a lot of people ask, well, I feel so good on steroids, why can't I stay on them forever? And they can lead to osteoporosis long-term and other difficulties. So that's one of the reasons that they don't. I'm just anticipating that as a question. No one asked it yet though. So, okay. So that's like the super, super, super fast RA 101. So here's like I can read 4 different tips for, getting adjusted to your new normal, and the little words of encouragement. So the first thing is, I know that feeling overwhelmed, like that's the word that people use the most when I talk to newly diagnosed patients. And so for me, when I feel overwhelmed, what helps is to make a list and get organized. So, you might already have your own system. You might have like an app, a symptom tracking app. You might have a whiteboard. You might have Post-it notes. I'm not sure. You might have a physical like journal. Sorry, I just hit my little microphone here. It's my podcasting microphone. But I have, I'm just saying I'm obsessed with little checklists because I do get overwhelmed personally really easily. And especially when you're newly diagnosed, you have so much to learn in a short period of time. So I do have this little master RA checklist, and I'm looking at it right now with fresh eyes and realizing, I just looked at this like earlier today and yesterday, but I'm like, oh, this is a lot. It's meant to not overwhelm you, but I can see how it might overwhelm you. But the idea is that you can kind of work your way through this checklist, make sure that you have a list of your medications and doses, make sure you have, who's on your care team, like rheumatologist, primary care. I know some of you are in different countries where you have different systems. A way to track your symptoms. You can gather some pain management tools and figure out what kind of mental support you need. So this I'm going to give to you an email, those of you who have registered for this via email. And those who didn't, you can get it at bit.ly/RA checklist, capital RA, or you can just email me and I'll give it to you, or contact me on Facebook. For those of you on the Facebook Live, there's 5 people on the Facebook Live. Hello, Facebook people. So I wanted to elaborate a little bit on your team. So, oh, Tiffany, you're 4 years into your diagnosis and you've recently started doing this and you're so glad. Oh, good. Yeah. You can feel very lost in the beginning, kind of like you're floating around to different specialists. And so yeah, getting organized, it's like a tiny bit overwhelming when you first start getting organized, right? Because it's a lot of work. But then once you do that initial upfront work, you feel less overwhelmed later. But also know like that you can get help from other people. And again, in the different countries, it might be different, but in the United States, depending on your insurance, you might qualify for getting help from a social worker who can help you access services and access maybe the insurance and help you wade through all of that, because that can be a big source of stress. Or counselors, occupational therapists and physical therapists. You know, occupational therapists can come in your home and help you set up your kitchen and introduce you to different life hack gadgets if you're having a lot of pain during daily activities. And physical therapists can do a lot and also help you with like exercise routines. And then of course you have your primary care and potentially a psychiatrist or psychologist. It's a really, you know, if you now again, unfortunately, insurance sometimes has their own stipulations, but home health care is a benefit for some people. So that's the really quick, like, know that there's not just your rheumatologist. You don't have to like wait. I've had people I've talked to who said, oh, I can't see my rheumatologist for 3 more months. I just got diagnosed last week. So I guess I have to just wait to ask all these questions in 3 months. It's a lot of places, depends on where you live. But like, I know some of you are in New York, like Hospital for Special Surgery is one of like my dream places. Like if I know anyone in New York, I'm like, you have to go there because they have a truly multidisciplinary team. They have social workers, and they actually use patient educators, like patients to help educate the newly diagnosed. It's really incredible. Anyway, side note, but the Hospital for Specialty Services, Hospital for Specialty Surgery in New York City. And confusingly, it's not just for surgery. Welcome to healthcare, where like none of the names make any sense. You're like, yeah. Okay. So the second thing is like, it's kind of like you get your organization out of the way. So your baseline overwhelm is a little bit controlled, but my biggest thing that I talk about is mental health and like taking care of your mind, because no matter like how well you're coping, this is for most people a stressful condition. So I think, allowing yourself to grieve, working towards acceptance can be so powerful, and it's very difficult work. So I commend you if you're open to this. But the first thing that has helped me a lot, and a lot of the people that I educate, is simply mindfulness. I know you might have already heard about mindfulness, but the actual definition of it, it's not about like clearing your mind, and like, it's not actually about like feeling quote unquote peaceful. It's actually just about being able to pay attention to the present moment without judging it as like good or bad, happy or sad, and be able to just observe yourself and without trying to change it. And I think what's so hard in rheumatic disease is when we're overwhelmed, we do kind of start focusing on the future, right? So I might be contradicting myself because I'm like, okay, you need to do all these proactive things to get your team in place and get organized and get your tools together for the future. But you also, at the same time, paradoxically, it benefits you to work on mindfulness, to be able to just sit in the present moment, because overwhelm is often from all these possibilities of what could happen in the future. I mean, I'm literally telling you something that my own therapist taught me. So I'm like, I'm not actually, I'm saying this from my own experience. Like, this did not come naturally to me. I kept saying, well, I want to worry about all this stuff in the future, because then if I think through all these things that could happen, I can make all these plans for what might happen. And then she's like, right, but then like life happens, and it's usually not even what you even were afraid of anyway. And I think like, I don't really want to talk too much about the pandemic. It's like too soon, but it's still happening. But, a lot of us had plans, right, in February of 2020, March of 2020, and they've really changed a lot. So if you spend so much time worrying about the future, you're kind of robbing yourself. I mean, it's kind of cliche, but, worry robs, what is it? Worrying robs the future. It robs you of the future, or something like that. I don't remember. I'll look up that quote. It robs the present of its joy, and something like that. So point being is it helps. I mean, you can tell my personality is like very high energy, and I don't sit still very easily, but I've started a mindfulness practice, and it's really, really, really helped me when I start spiraling. When you spiral, kind of like, what's going to happen? What about this? What about that? There's a time and place for that, like planning for the future, but there's something really nice about just focusing on the present. And it can have this effect of kind of calming your nervous system out of that kind of fight or flight, which we tend to get into when we're stressed. Whew, I'm gonna take a breather for a second. I need to take a breath. Okay. Worry is the greatest thief of joy. Thank you, Kathleen. Yes, the worry is the thief of joy. Like, you spend so much time worrying about the future, and it robs the present of its joy. So acceptance and commitment therapy, I'll put the book in, oh, it's on here. Russ Harris, The Happiness Trap, such a great book. I know the word acceptance can be tricky, especially in the newer stages of getting a diagnosis. But in this case, I'll explain to you a little bit about what acceptance means in the context of here. But you just say, it's really a mindfulness thing where you say, okay, this is what the present is right now. I'm just noticing it. And it's literally, acceptance means like taking what's offered. So this is what's being offered to me. I'm connecting to that just for now in the present. Doesn't mean that the future might not be better. But then you also connect to your values and take action. So you basically say, okay, I'm allowing these feelings to be exactly as they are, whatever I'm feeling right now, even if that's pain. And this is really, really hard. But then you say, what can I do right now that's like truly meaningful or important, rather than saying, how can I feel better? And again, this took me a long time. I had to read the book and go to therapy. So if this is not resonating, it's okay. But basically what it does is it makes it so your happiness is not contingent on your symptoms being controlled perfectly, because that is a trap I see a lot of newly diagnosed people get into. They have to make the pain go away before they can like live their life. And the fact is that like your pain might not be perfectly controlled. We hope it can be. 70% of people will respond to the current modern drug therapies, and that's amazing, but some people won't. And then so you want to actually learn how to cope with what's happening in the present moment. It's almost like it prepares you for the worst case scenario. And then if that doesn't happen, then you can be pleasantly surprised and be like, oh, that's not as bad as I was worried about. So again, why? Okay. So I'm telling you all the questions I had, Like, why would I want to accept bad thoughts like sadness or anger or bad feelings like pain? So in the interest, let's just talk about like anxiety thoughts or sad thoughts, because you might be feeling sad about your diagnosis. You might be feeling angry about your diagnosis. I was angry. I felt like I did everything. This is me being a little privileged and a little bit of an A student over here, or teacher's pet. I was like, I did everything right my whole life. I didn't do, I didn't drink. I didn't do drugs, and again, this is just me being a goody two shoes, but I was like, I ate healthy. I exercised. Why did this happen to me? I don't deserve this, On the one hand, I could use all these logical things to say, okay, well, we all know that like bad things can happen to anyone, but also we can say, hey, yeah, like that's a thought I'm having right now. Is it helpful to pay attention to that thought? Will it create, will paying more attention to that thought create the life that I want for myself? Or is it, again, taking me away from what I really want? Now, the thing about ACT that I like is that, and this is me just going on a little bit of a tirade of happiness about ACT, but one of the things I like about it is that it does teach you that kind of radical acceptance. Like, yeah, I'm feeling angry right now. I'm feeling sad about my diagnosis. And your goal isn't to like change that feeling. That feeling is what it is. You actually like can't really change your feelings, according to this psychological theory, is that the feelings are just what they are. And we have choices about how you respond to them. So it's kind of like you give up, they call it giving up the struggle switch, where you stop struggling with your feelings. Exactly. So here's the struggle switch where, let's see, the struggle switch is on when you feel anxiety or you feel fear. I'm afraid about my future. Then you feel anxiety about anxiety. Oh no, now I'm feeling anxious, and that's not good for my health, because anxiety and stress are giving me a fight or flight reaction, and that's bad for inflammation. So now I'm sad that I'm not successfully controlling my anxiety, and I'm not successfully controlling my feelings, and I'm frustrated. And now I'm angry and guilty about that. So you're saying, I don't want these feelings. But turning the struggle switch off is just saying, oh, here's anxiety, or here's stress about my condition, about what's happening in my life. I don't want it. I don't have to like it, but I'm going to choose not to struggle with it. And it's kind of a very freeing process. So basically, sitting with your grief in terms of a diagnosis is a good example of this. So, you don't need my permission, but I'm again projecting onto you because of how I was as a newly diagnosed patient. I will give you permission if you need a permission slip to, grieve the life that you thought you would have prior to this diagnosis. Everyone had plans for how they thought their life was going to be. And most people, unless they have, like, let's say, both of their parents had this or something, most people don't really think that it's going to happen to them. You might not even have known that there was anything other than osteoarthritis. You might have just been totally shocked by this. So, it's normal to feel sad. It's normal to feel frustrated. And this is not, how you planned your life. And, instead of trying to force yourself to feel better or a different way about it, sometimes it's like the only way out is through, validating your own emotions. So that's just a little pep talk there. And then the uncertainty, which a few people mentioned in the comments earlier. So I created this 3-door analogy. So there's these kind of 3 different ways of responding to uncertainty. So I'm going to start with the different poles here. Door 1 is the positive thinking only. Like, let's say uncertainty about my rheumatoid arthritis. Is it going to get better? Is it going to get worse? Am I going to respond to my medicine or not? You can choose to have a super positive thinking, forced positive thinking. I should say forced positive thinking. Like, I'm only going to think positive about it. I know it will get better. I'm going to control my future again. And I consider this, even though people always say I'm a positive person, and I do think there's benefit of at times being grateful for the positive things in your life and looking at things in that light. I don't think that forced positive thinking is useful for most people long-term, because it's built on an illusion. And so eventually most people have to confront that. So if you're very lucky, maybe you never have to, but most people aren't that lucky. Door number 3 is the doom and gloom one. That's the kind of it's definitely going to get worse. It will never get better. There's no hope. I might as well not try. And that doesn't help you engage in life. Now, again, I'm always playing devil's advocate with my own brain. So I'm I did say earlier that RA is a progressive condition by definition, if uncontrolled. However, that does not mean there's different degrees of progression. You can progress really, really fast, or you can progress really, really slow, or you could actually stall the progression. Some people have been able to totally stall it, like STALL. So being on either extreme, saying it's going to be definitely better or definitely worse, is not usually in your favor, because it's unknowable. The present is really all that we know. This is me, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid of mindfulness here, but it is true, right? That's the only sure thing, is what's happening in the present. So door number 2 is the one I try to go in. I am sometimes dragged into this door kicking and screaming, but it's the accepting the uncertainty. So it might get better. It might get worse. I don't know. But in the meanwhile, I can still focus on having a meaningful life or a satisfying life the best I can, despite this uncertainty. So that is what I've learned from ACT. And again, I know it might not be intuitive. Tiffany did agree with me. So thank you. At least one person agrees. It's okay. Again, if you don't, I don't think I would have agreed with me until I had read the book and did all this therapy. And and I want to acknowledge that we all have default kind of personality, kind of orientations, right? So some people have a more at baseline depressive explanatory style, or way they tend towards, some people tend towards door 3. I definitely tend towards door 1. That's the one I want to go, and I'm always going to want to be there. And I'm never not going to want to be there. I don't think, I just accept that's what I want, but it's not sustainable. I'm very stubborn, but even I had to admit after a while that it is not sustainable, because suffering is an inevitable part of life, whether it's from rheumatoid arthritis or something else. We are all going to have to confront suffering. So the sooner that we actually accept that, the more engaged we can actually be in our lives, rather than kind of living this life of fear or the seeking control that's ultimately actually an illusion. So, okay, I'm going to get back to actually rheumatoid arthritis. Don't worry. But this all relates, because at the end of the day, what stresses people out, is that lack of control. We want control. Anxiety especially makes you oftentimes want control. And in the short term, feeling control does alleviate your anxiety. So you become kind of addicting to it, but long term, actually, again, the paradox is that accepting the randomness of life and accepting that uncertainties actually frees you from this. Like, it's like, if I can imagine myself, my previous self, I spent so much energy trying to control my life and trying to avoid uncertainty. And yeah, reframe. Yeah. So cognitive behavior therapy. So ACT came out of mindfulness and cognitive behavior therapy. Now, traditional CBT is very, very commonly used for anxiety and difficulty with life transitions, like getting a new diagnosis. And yeah, and if you started anxiety therapy, I'm so proud of anyone who goes to therapy. I was very stubborn to admit that I needed help. I didn't go till after my son was born, because there was such a good amount of awareness in the United States about postpartum mood disorders. And I thought, okay, it's finally, quote unquote, like, it's acceptable for me to go to therapy because it's a normalized thing. But really, I should have given myself permission to go earlier. So yeah. Oh, good. Maria's starting in October. Yeah. So like this little support group to support you in therapy. So CBT is just a therapy technique that encourages, and you can do it on your own or obviously with a therapist. It encourages you to be a detective about your thoughts, to say like, are these thoughts I'm having true, or are they maybe distortions? So if they are distortions, you can actually cognitively reframe the distortion. So those of you who went to my stress webinar, 3 ways I manage stress with chronic illness, I did talk in a lot more detail about this, because I think CBT works when it's a quote unquote, it's a thinking problem, like it's a problem caused by a maladaptive thought pattern. Or let's go through an example. So ants are like a distortion. They're automatic negative thoughts. So let's say one person says to you, like someone said earlier today, that their family members or someone said, oh, you're too young to have rheumatoid arthritis. The automatic negative thought from that might be, no one's ever going to understand me. Everyone is going to say that I'm too young to have arthritis. No one's ever going to get it. And that's a distortion, because that's way too black or white. It's way too exaggerated. You're taking one situation, one encounter, and you're making a more global generalization from it than logically you should. So then you learn to reframe, like, what's a different way of looking at it? So Joe told me I'm too young for arthritis. Okay, well, that's Joe's opinion. That doesn't necessarily mean it's everyone's. Does that make sense? So it is in ACT, they would kind of call that like kind of arguing with your thoughts, but it can be helpful when you notice that you're on a automatic negative thought pattern. And our brains tend to have those, we in the context can affect that a lot. Like we might have a automatic negative thought that like the worst thing is going to happen. Right. Okay. So I got to speed up a little bit. So the gratitude, and again, I'm not saying gratitude is like forced positivity. Like, oh, I have to like have a gratitude journal so I can like force myself to feel better. But literally just taking a moment to recognize something that is going well, alongside acknowledging the grief of what you've lost. An example for me is that, just to be totally honest, like, we always wanted to have 2 kids, and my health, I just turned 40, as I said earlier. And I had a lot of health issues in addition to the rheumatoid arthritis after Charlie was born. And it got to the point where we were like, I'm not healthy enough. And after this point, even if I got healthy enough again, I don't think it's too late. We had to make that decision. And so, that's obviously that could be a whole hour-long talk, but when I see families of 2 kids, and who knows, maybe I couldn't even have had another baby. We don't know. It's definitely not, it's not a case of fertility necessarily. We don't know, but we did get pregnant with my son pretty easily. And I can on the one hand, I'm sorry, can we just laugh at my dog for a second? I just love that picture so much. But so we can take a minute to be grateful for what we have, but grieve what we lost. Like, I feel like, and especially during the pandemic, so many people have said stuff about only children. I'm like, stop saying that. Like, I feel like I have a complex now because, but I'm so grateful that I was able to have a child. Like, so many people are never able to get pregnant, but I'm also like acknowledged that I always thought I would have more than one. And I grieve that I didn't have another one because of my health. So you can do both. That's what I'm just saying. And then, okay. This is, oh my gosh, I have so much more to tell you. Don't worry. I'll send you additional resources after this. So learning tools is to manage your symptoms is called self-management. And that is a whole field in chronic conditions that people who learn how to manage their condition feel better, not surprisingly. So self-management is the ability to, I just love how they put this in this multiplechronic conditions.org website, they literally put the words deal with, because that is what it is. The ability of us to deal with all that the chronic illness entails, symptoms, treatment, social, physical, lifestyle, to improve our quality of life. So, okay, it's the how of everything in your checklist. So really, really quick crash course. So we can do things like light exercise is very good for rheumatoid arthritis. Start small and increase very incrementally. And if you're in a lot of pain, starting with the ones that are the least impactful on your joints, like swimming or cycling, can be easier than like walking and running. Other little habits, nutrition, anti-inflammatory foods. The chronic pain nutritionist, Jennifer, has some great on Instagram. I'll put her thing in here. She has some really great resources on that. Protecting your joints, simple example, using an ergonomic mouse or a jar opener. Oh, this is hilarious. I'm on my different computer, so I have a regular mouse, but I do have a vertical mouse on my main computer. And then putting together a toolbox of your pain relief items, the things that work for your body, like compression gloves, cold packs, hot packs, topical creams. And yeah, Maria, that's great that you went for a walk. Walking is so good. It's not just good for your muscles for arthritis. It can also actually combat fatigue. Believe it or not, they actually randomly assign patients to like an exercise group and a control group in some studies, and show that the people who exercised, not only they slept better and they had less fatigue. So that was really interesting. And their pain got slightly better. And then starting a mindfulness practice. So again, I know it's a lot of different ideas. A couple because I always like to give people practical tips. So things that protect your joints, like a jar opener or a 𝗪𝗻, which is that sticky material you can use to twist off a jar, a top of a jar, and then using ice or heat. The general rule of thumb is that if your joints are hot and red and tender and inflamed, ice is better. And if your joints are cold and stiff, heat is better. That said, you might notice your own pattern and listen to your body. Oh, thank you, Ushma. Oh, thank you. My very unbiased fellow rheumatoid disease friend here is saying this, thanking me for being resourceful. I appreciate you too. And then for fatigue, which fatigue is like the forgotten symptom here often, learning how to pace yourself and chunking tasks into parts, delegating, planning ahead. One of the best examples I learned was from one of the people in my Room to Thrive group. And she said, I just assign, instead of waiting till the weekend to do all the chores, I assign a different chore to a different day of the week. So it's always like Monday is always, kitchen. Tuesday is like upstairs bathroom. Wednesday is downstairs bathroom. Thursday is vacuuming the floors, so that you're not doing it all at once. So that would be like an example of chunking the tasks out or pacing. And yes, okay, I will send you, Leslie, I'm going to download all of these questions. And then when I send the replay, I'll send answers. I have a list of my favorite joint protection gadgets, and I can also send you some other ones. The Arthritis Foundation has a really fabulous ease of use program where they kind of have also, trying to be objective and giving you different opinions too. You can have my opinion, plus I'll give you some others. And then, so here's some things that are in my pain toolbox. So again, a paraffin bath. I'm curious if anyone else here uses a paraffin bath, but like a hot wax bath. Super helpful for like stiff joints. It really seems to penetrate deeper than just a hot pack. And then sensory items that can just make you feel comforted. Like for me, I'm really smell sensitive. So I like things that make me feel calmer, like lavender, and like mental tools like music, and then cognitive tools. So, you can even have affirmations like this too shall pass. And, I do just always want people to counterbalance. Like on the one hand, we do want to have methods to make the problem go away, right? Like reduce the pain or eliminate the pain and fatigue and attempts to cure and heal it. But we also want to focus on like workarounds. And that's what a joint protection gadget is a good example of. It not only protects your joints, but it helps you work around existing pain and fatigue. By the way, if you've ever just had a hard time opening something, please know that you're not alone. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, I felt so silly. Like I'm the only one that can't open this orange juice container. And it's like, no, you are not alone. So again, focusing on what you can still do now. So the fourth and final tip is to get support. And again, a few of you already mentioned you're going to get therapy. That's amazing. There's also in-person well, increasingly online versus in-person groups. There's groups that are diagnosis specific, like groups for people who have general chronic conditions versus specific ones for specific conditions. And then I'm just kind of giving you a little overview. They can be facilitated by patients or other lay people or professionals like, a nurse or an occupational therapist or a physical therapist. And so where do you find one? You can find one at nonprofits and hospitals. And I just gave an example from the Arthritis Foundation. They have a monthly Live Yes Connect group that is grouped together in the United States by your location, even though they're meeting all by Zoom right now or virtual. And I have my own Room to Thrive program, which meets weekly, which I will be telling you about in a few moments. And so I'm just going to take a second to breathe and remember that feelings are for feeling. I don't know if any of you else have read Glennon Doyle Melton's books, but she's a really powerful writer. And she wrote a great book called Untamed. And a big point of that is, to give yourself permission to feel your feelings. And so to recap, you want to get organized, learn about your condition. Of course, I gave you a little bit of that 101. Get organized with your checklist, take care of your mind, whatever tools work for you. I forgot to mention religion because religion can be a huge source of comfort and support for people too, or any other like cultural, support groups. At TJ Maxx, Maria found a massaging foot warmer, both feet at the same time. Yes, I'm glad. See, I didn't want to be biased because I don't like automatic massagers for whatever reason, but I know a lot of people do, either the feet ones or the hand ones. There's ones that you place your hand into. They're like rectangles like this, and some people love them. I think I'm a control freak. I'm like, I don't want this thing to massage me. But and then you want to learn the tools to manage your day-to-day and get support. So in general, if you already, a lot of you said you didn't even get a pamphlet, but just so you know, the 2015 EULAR, European League Against Rheumatism, did a report and they showed that most people with rheumatoid arthritis had received insufficient information and they wanted to be enabled to re-engage in previously abandoned activities. And that was, for me, that's my call to action, because that's exactly kind of why, honestly, I formed Arthritis Life to begin with, because I was like, well, someone has to do something. And then finally I was like, oh, I'm someone, maybe I can do something. So, again, you can figure it out on your own. A lot of people become very medically literate in what's going on with their body. They read a lot of books, they read a lot of articles, and some people like to do it on their own. But the thing about that for other people who try that route is that it is time intensive to figure it all out on your own. And time equals money, but also it takes a lot of cognitive energy, which a lot of people don't have in this post-diagnosis period. And it can also be confusing because you can go down a lot of like internet rabbit holes. And so that's why I think there's such a great need for like someone to kind of guide you. Like I think of myself honestly as like a tour guide for rheumatoid arthritis, but a tour guide who's also like suffering the same condition, but kind of teaching you, the best tricks that I've learned, but also like helping you have your own kind of adventures and choose your own adventure with how you're going to manage it. Cause you might find different things work for you than work for me. Like, Maria likes the foot massager. I didn't really like the foot massager, but it might work for everyone on this call right now. So I just wanted to take the last few minutes to let you know about this support group, online education and support program I specifically created to give you a really warm and welcoming environment to learn more. It's basically kind of like this, but where we can all see each other. This is technically like a Zoom webinar, but it's like a Zoom meeting where we meet every week. And I do instead of like this, I do a 15-minute little presentation, and then we move on to question and answer. And then we move on to general support. So it's a blend of like an education group and a support group. And so, yeah, we have 3 live video calls minimum. I schedule them for 4 for every week because I want to make sure if I get sick or something that, we still meet our minimum of 3. And the whole focus is like thriving with your condition, using the tools, supporting each other. We balance like learning ways to manage your condition better with adapting and coping with what's going on in the moment. So there's also a private online community. And the reason I mention this all now is that I only open the registration twice a year because, well, I did it 3 times this year, but I'm only going to be doing it twice a year from now on. So one's in the spring and one's in the fall. And because I want it to be a cohort because people really get to know each other. It is amazing. Like you would think those of people born like in the 80s, like me, you wouldn't think people could really form such deep bonds so quickly, but they actually can, even virtually. So those young of you are like, yeah, duh. But, it's, again, this is just from somebody in the group who wanted to remain anonymous, but, they felt alone. They didn't know where to begin. And then the group has offered all this validation and encouragement and access to resources. Those are the 2 pillars. It's education and support. And, you don't have to spin your wheels overthinking and over researching. And I like to share tips for living well in a close community atmosphere. I'm like, wow, you put it really well. Thank you. And then, I try to keep it upbeat, yet very very honest and realistic. And it is organized. And I do go on a little side notes and tangents, but it is organized in terms of the information. And we go through, we go through what I created, this Thrive framework, just all these different tools for living a good life, not just physically, but, mentally and socially and in your jobs and all the ways that it affects your life. So the little exciting news is that I also have this online course. So don't worry too much about, I'm not going to worry too much about all the details, but the online course teaches some of those same things, but it's meant to be like a self-paced thing that you don't go through like with a support group. So some people have done both, some just do Room to Thrive, but right now this course, you can get it for free if you do sign up for Room to Thrive. Room to Thrive is a 6-month program. It's $57 US per month or $292 for 6 months up front. Now, those of you in other countries, or those of you who are like on disability, just email me. I'll just put my email in the chat, info@myarthritislife.net. I do like need-based discounts for sure. But so for right now, if you do get it in the next, basically a little over 24 hours, you can get if you invest in Room to Thrive, my support group, then you can get the Rheumatoid Arthritis Roadmap course for free. And also, actually, my friend 𝗪𝗻'𝘁'𝘀𝗲𝗿𝗲𝗱, she's on the call here. She's like, you should also give them additional discount. She's like, she had a really good idea. So if you use the coupon code is webinar, you can get 20% off through tomorrow too also. So I'm just trying to give you a little bit incentive, and where you can, I'm going to stop the share so I can post the actual link. I'm realizing here, I didn't actually give you the link of where to sign up, but it's, it is Arthritis Life School. But does anyone have any questions about those? Here it is. Or any questions about anything else? Oh, I lost my chat here. Because I went really fast at the end, but a lot of you are still here. So I'm available to answer questions about Room to Thrive, which again, it is a 6-month long support group blend of support group and educational program. So the goal is by the end of the 6 months, you will feel more empowered, more supported, less alone, and like you have access to kind of valid sources and supportive sources of information. I feel like it's focusing on the microphone. There we go. Yes, I do know people with rheumatoid arthritis and fibromyalgia. That can be a hard combination, I mean, not surprisingly, because they're different kinds of pain, but sometimes it's hard to know what's causing what. So yeah, but there's actually a couple in the group right now that have rheumatoid arthritis and fibromyalgia. Any other questions? I don't see a lot of questions this time. I tried to leave some room for questions, as usually we have a little smattering. I know those of you on the East Coast, I know Claire in Ireland, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, so feel free to, you're free to go if you are done. Oh, how long does it take methotrexate to kick in? So overall, a lot of the medications, it's in the 3 to 6 month range, but you usually would want to see some improvement by 3 months. And I would definitely talk to your doctor about methotrexate, because they might want to see the timeline be shorter or longer, depending on how severe your condition was. So severity can dictate how long it takes. You're kind of like, if your disease was more severe, your blood markers were more severe, or you had more pain or starting to have like deformities at the time of your diagnosis, then sometimes it may take longer because you're kind of starting from a lower starting point than somebody who maybe just I know someone who was who's in the group who she didn't even have any symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis other than she had her wrist hurt and she got referred to surgery for carpal tunnel surgery. And then it turns out in her carpal tunnel surgery, they were like, we did a biopsy of your synovial fluid because it looked kind of funky. And we found out that you have rheumatoid arthritis. So in her case, it was very mild because she didn't even have any other symptoms, just one wrist. And then her RA got under control right away. Oh, yeah. How do you know which, this is a question in like the Q&A part, not in the chat. How do we know which questions or symptoms to ask which doctor? Rheumatologists act like pains are not for them. Well, wow. Yeah. So in general, like when I'm having pain in my joints and the classic symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis, the rheumatologist is the person who I talk to about that. So sometimes if it's like, for example, if I told my rheumatologist that like I had an earache, they would probably refer me back to, my primary care doctor. Or but if it has to do with your joints or your systemic symptoms like fatigue, it usually is the rheumatologist. So I'm sorry, I don't know why your rheumatologist is saying that the pain is not for her to help with. And find it hard to explain all the problems to your doctor. Never enough time. Yes, never enough time. That is a hard one. And I think one thing I always do if I have a lot that I want to talk about is I ask them how long the appointment was made for, and if there's a way to have it be longer or a way to have a follow-up appointment, because you do have the right to get your questions answered. So you might be able to do a follow-up, even like a telehealth consult or like a phone call with the nurse at the rheumatology clinic to answer some of your questions. But you're not alone. I mean, I feel like when my doctor's like, I think for patient satisfaction, some places they're taught like you have to say, is there any more questions? Is there any more questions you have? And I'm like, you don't want to ask that to me because I could talk to you all day. Like I literally could ask my doctor questions all day. So before the appointment, when this is one of the things we talk about in Rheum to Thrive, is you want to write down your questions and put them in priority order. So take that time ahead of time so you can maximize the appointment and say, okay, I have 3 questions I really want to get through. Like, here's the first one. So you're kind of one of the little phrases I found helpful is like, you're the CEO of your care team. Like you are the one that is in charge. You're the one that lives in your body. So, seeing yourself in that role can be helpful. And yeah, your GP helps, but it's frustrating. I'm sorry. Yeah. I mean, I think if it has anything to do with your joints, usually a rheumatologist is the one. And someone's asking, are GI issues common with RA? Yes, it is more common to have gastrointestinal issues when you have rheumatoid arthritis. And I think people are still, still trying to figure out the link, but it has something to do with the gut immune system. And yeah, so compression gloves are another thing that is very subjective. I use compression gloves a lot because I do find that the way that I describe it is they can dull the sensation of pain. If you're in acute, really bad pain, they're not going to make the pain completely go away, in my case at least, but they dull it. So they could bring it from like a 6 to a 4, or a 4 to a 2. So again, numbers aren't that helpful, but just as like a way to say that they decrease the severity of the sensation. And what's interesting is the way they do that is that the way that the pain pathways work when the afferent nerves go from the sensory nerves go from like your hands up to your brain. When you give your brain multiple sensory input in one area, like pressure and pain, it's harder for it to completely process one or the other. So it's kind of like they drown each other out. That's the theory behind it. So their pain science is extremely complex. So, I've done some training in just general pain science for like chronic pain. Confusingly, chronic pain is different than chronic, like You can have chronic pain from an acute injury, like a car accident, that then becomes chronic, or you can have chronic pain from a chronic condition that's like an ongoing disease process. So chronic pain science can be a little bit tricky because sometimes I'll say, well, the people in chronic pain from like an injury, there's no tissue, there's no lingering tissue damage, and it's just kind of a misfiring of the pain centers in their brain. But with rheumatoid arthritis, you can't really say that because it can be a ongoing painful disease process. Is it normal to be on several drugs at the same time? Yeah. So I'm going to put this here again, just so in case someone missed it. So interestingly, I was just reviewing this research from 2019 that at least in the United States, they usually start you on methotrexate, quote unquote, monotherapy. About 50% of patients are able to do well with just methotrexate, but the other 50% need more. So I was actually fast tracked, I think, because my RA was so severe. I was immediately put on methotrexate and then a biologic, like really, really fast. Some people are put on sulfasalazine, then methotrexate or Plaquenil, then a biologic. It's all but it's definitely, especially when you get as long as I have had it, like 20 years almost, most people are on multiple drugs. So I'm on 2 right now also. Can it exist? Oh yeah, yes, Diane. Rheumatoid arthritis can exist with osteoarthritis in another part of your body, for sure. Because you can get they're like 2 different processes. You are more likely to develop osteoarthritis in any given joint if you already have rheumatoid arthritis, like pain or inflammation from rheumatoid arthritis, because it can lead to that wearing and tearing on the joint. Yes, unfortunately, Mary Beth, methotrexate, whether injected or taken orally, can be associated with nausea. That's nausea and fatigue are the most commonly reported side effects of methotrexate. But when you inject it, it's less likely to have nausea. That's why so many people inject it. That's why I personally inject it. So it's less likely to cause nausea that way, but you still can potentially get nausea that way. So it's not a guarantee, but less likely. I don't see any comments on the Facebook. So, okay. Do injections cause less fatigue? Unfortunately, not that I'm aware of. Maybe it's possible, but I think the injection is, my understanding is that it's purely to minimize the stomach nausea side effect, not to help with the fatigue. Yeah, the fatigue, I always say, and this is something I teach in the program, but I'll just tell you guys for now, that if you're having really severe fatigue, it can be caused by the disease itself, especially if you have a lot of inflammation. But I think it's worth personally considering whether you can rule out other causes of fatigue. So this is something I learned at the American College of Rheumatology conference in 2019. People with rheumatoid arthritis are really more likely to have sleep apnea than the average population, which is sleep apnea is a sleep disorder, even if they have no other risk factors. So they're not overweight, they don't smoke, they don't snore, and they still might have sleep apnea. So sleep disorders could be causing your fatigue along with rheumatoid arthritis. You also want to, I'm not telling you like medical advice. This is not medical advice, but you might want to look into make sure your iron levels are tested. You might be anemic, and look into other like deficiencies like vitamin D or B12 that can maybe help. And then, is it normal to stay on the same meds long-term for RA? So it depends on the med. Like I've been on methotrexate the whole time, except for when I got pregnant, and when I wanted to get pregnant, and when we thought we might have another baby, because it's very not good for pregnancy. It can cause, unfortunately, the baby to not develop. And so I've been on methotrexate a long time, except for pregnancy and family planning. But then my biologics have changed. So doesn't always happen, but for some people, the biologics like the 𝗪𝗵𝘃𝗃, Enbrel, Remicade, Orencia, Xeljanz, what can happen is, I like to say it bluntly, your immune system is stupid enough to attack your healthy tissues in your body, but it's smart enough to create antibodies to the medication. So your immune system for RA, some people like me, your immune system really, really wants to attack the synovial fluid. It's like, I'm going to get in there. And so, but some people don't. I just heard from someone today that's been on Enbrel for like 20 years. And I was like, whoa. Oh, is ankylosing spondylitis related to spinal anesthesia problems, like cerebrospinal fluid leaking? Ooh, no, please don't be sorry for that question. I don't know the answer to that. And I would have to look that up. So, or ask your doctor. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's caused or if it's related to the cerebrospinal fluid leaking. Um, Someone's on Plaquenil. Yeah, Plaquenil is safe for many people to stay on long term as long as you don't have, as long as your eyes are monitored by the ophthalmologist for eye damage. Um, yeah, so 𝗪𝗵𝘁'𝘀𝗲, sorry, I'm just calling you M. Your hands are swollen but not painful. Your wrists, elbows, and shoulders are really problematic. Kind of other issues like carpal tunnel and tennis elbow follow. Unfortunately, yes, because your carpal tunnel, especially, it's like, so there's so many little tiny, ligaments and muscles and nerves that are going through the small space of your wrist. Who was I just explaining this to? Oh, it was the Room to Thrive group on Saturday. That like, so your wrist is like a very, what's the word? So let me say it in contrast to your hip. Your hip is a very solid like ball and socket. Like the ball is your femur, the head of the femur, and then the socket is this like nice big round shaped socket in your pelvis. So it's like very tight in there, it fits nicely, and then you can only go kind of one direction. Okay. Your wrist has a lot going on. Did you know there's like 8 or 9, I always forget if 8 or 9 little tiny like circular and different weirdly shaped bones in your wrist? Little tiny circles here, and then there's the radius and the ulna. Radius is here, the ulna is here, and then you have these longer, your finger bones that are longer, that are more normal shape. These are, point being, your wrist is a very complex joint. And I was really mad when I was in occupational therapy school, and I remember reading, said, well, there's 4 different theories as to the wrist kinematics and how the wrist works. I'm like, really, people? We've put a man on the moon and we can't figure out how the wrist works? Like, someone figure this out. So sorry. So the point of that is that if you have inflammation from rheumatoid arthritis in your wrist, there's a lot going on in your wrist in a very, very tiny space. So any amount of inflammation in there can cause other issues like carpal tunnel, which is like irritation of the nerves there. Is muscle fatigue a symptom? Yeah. So generally, it's hard. I would say that if you were experiencing that rheumatoid cachexia, that's like literally muscle wasting. So yes, if you're having that, that's usually associated with the more severe rheumatoid arthritis. But then you will feel the sense of muscle fatigue, but it's not usually like one of the first symptoms. And that's why it was weird that it was in my case. And your fingertips are sore. Usually with rheumatoid, it's like your knuckles and your proximal interphalangeals, not as often your distal interphalangeals, which are these ones, but it can be. But interesting. Do you tell the rheumatologist about, or the GP about pain issues? Oh, are you talking about a specific kind of pain? Let me go back. Let's see. 𝗪𝗵𝘁'𝘀𝗲𝗿𝗱 question about pain. Hands are swollen but not painful. Yeah. So okay, so this is one where you might, I hate to say it depends, but you might have to ask your general practitioner, would they, do they feel like they could treat the carpal tunnel, or would they want you to go to the rheumatologist? In general, if any person starts having symptoms of carpal tunnel, the general practitioner may be able to treat them, just suggest, like a resting wrist splint or something, or refer them to like a certified hand therapist. Long story short, in practical life, usually it's easier to get into your general practitioner or your primary care doctor, right? It's usually easier to get into them. So I kind of start there. They're supposed to be your gatekeeper. They're supposed to be the one in the United States where they kind of know, they're the glue that holds, or they're the entry point to which you can get referred to the other specialists. So, but it may just depend. Like, I know that my rheumatologist, she would feel comfortable treating carpal tunnel, but I think you're by the book supposed to start with your general practitioner. And then what about hydroxychloroquine? That's Plaquenil. And then they want Yeah. So Maria, okay. So yeah, I can't give obviously anyone like medication advice in terms of like, you should do this. But yeah, there's two different schools of thought there, and it's totally dependent on your own risk benefit calculation in your head. And this is something we talked about in the E section of rim to Thrive. The executive functioning is like becoming the CEO of your care team. And part of that is being able to make those cost benefit decisions. So, okay, what you would like, you're saying, is to start on the low end and increase if necessary. That is one school of thought, and that there's reasons to do that. There might be someone else who says, I am really worried about this progressing. I want to go all in, as aggressive as possible with the medication, and then scale back later if I'm feeling good. So there's just two schools of thought on that. And it really just, the standard in rheumatology is what's called like shared decision making. It's the best practices where it's a shared decision between you and your provider. I'm not going to say that that's always what happens in the real world, but that's like the ideal scenario. And that is what the evidence shows is best. So yeah, so the decision could be made for Maria if that's what your preference is, but a different patient with the same situation, they might prefer something different. And that's why sometimes you have different people on different paths. And so M. Beasley, or methotrexate and Enbrel, it's helped a lot, but it's a rough road. Yeah. Well, I'm glad it's helping, but yeah, I totally understand. It's rough. It's a lot of information. It's very complicated. And yeah. And oh, thank you, Ushma. And you get a lot of numbness, tingling. Yeah. Interestingly, so like Marlena, in general, like the numbness and tingling are that is usually, that is a sign of a nerve issue, and rheumatoid arthritis on its own doesn't always correlate to that, or it's not the most common, but it can, if you have a lot of inflammation, it can compress the nerves and lead to the numbness and tingling sensation. So if your disease is well controlled and you're still feeling numbness and tingling, like let's say your joints don't hurt, but you're feeling numbness and tingling, and your joints aren't swollen, but you're feeling numbness and tingling, definitely talk to your doctor about that, because it could be something else going on. Yay. Okay. Well, gosh, you guys have all stayed on late. This is great. I mean, this was like my big activity of the afternoon. So I'm here. But maybe I'll say 10 more minutes just because I've got to go get dinner ready in a few minutes. But yeah. Oh, roller coaster. Yeah, it is a roller coaster. Oh, and Marlena, you had a nerve test in your arm. They said it was okay. Yeah. Okay. So here we get into mystery symptom territory. And all I can do is empathize. I think one of the hardest things is when you have mystery symptoms. I had that with my toes. I was starting to feel like I was losing sensation of my toes. Like I even felt like when I was putting my like shoes on and stuff, I was like, where's my foot? Like, it was really confusing. And with that, because sometimes people can develop lupus over many years of being on the medications I've been on, they did not lupus, I'm sorry, multiple sclerosis. Gosh, sorry. I got a brain MRI to rule out multiple sclerosis, which I don't have, but yeah, it's kind of like you just have a mystery symptom. Could get better, could get worse. One last question. You have a toe that moves like out of whack. Ooh, tell me more about your toe. I'm not sure how you mean. Like, does it move side to side, front to back? Like, is it like kind of like the joint is lax, like loose? And yeah, Maria, you're 47 years old and you started this road on August 31st. Oh my gosh. You haven't even had it a month. That's totally normal to be on a roller coaster. Yeah, I'm glad that you found this, because I mean, unless it's not helpful, in which case I'm sorry that you found this webinar, but yeah, it's a roller coaster and it changes in time. But, I think the hardest thing in the beginning is knowing what's normal for me. Like, what can I expect, right? Like a lot of times in the very beginning, the doctors are trying, and your medical team wants to be like, aim for the stars. Like, we want to get your pain completely under control, your joint inflammation under control. And then you kind of work backwards if that doesn't seem very realistic. Like for me, having zero joint pain and zero inflammation is not as realistic anymore, but I have very minimal amount of inflammation and a minimal amount of pain. So that's livable for me. But in the very beginning, that might not be acceptable. So yeah, random nerve pain can come and go. Thank you all for being here. Oh my gosh. And so I'm putting in here again. Remember, there's a coupon code. If you just put webinar in the checkout process, you can get 20% off of Room to Thrive through tomorrow, plus the rheumatoid arthritis robot for free. If you're not sick of hearing my voice yet, all your toes move and line up so it doesn't even hit the ground. So that's interesting. I can't visualize exactly what you're talking about. I'm sorry. It's totally my fault. So I would have to see a video or something. Leslie, I don't know. That's a great question about rheumatoid cachexia. I don't know if there's a test for it. Maybe they do I think that my doctor was able to just see it by visual. They call it visual inspection when they just look at your body and look at your joints, and or physical inspections when they feel. So maybe it was very severe for me because I went from like 130-pound, like college athlete, to 105-pound. Like you could just look at a picture of me like the year before and then see me then and be like, something happened. Yeah. Interesting. Oh, I'm so glad you found my YouTube channel. Yay. So yeah, I'm sorry, MDs, I'm really not sure. I do know that some people, over time, you can definitely, the trend over time typically is that your joints become less flexible if you end up developing deformities. So you can see that my hands don't have any like hugely obvious deformities, but actually like when I do, you can see that my right base of my thumb is fatter. It is more swollen than and that's because I actually have osteo on top of rheumatoid. And I can put my thumb across my left. I can't really get it. Okay. I kind of like cheated because I moved this in. See, I did that. Good. I can't do it. So, but I can still do most of what I need to do in my life. I just, this one is less, do you see that it's less flexible? And like for how small my frame is, like how small my bones are, I do have some, hypertrophy, which means like swelling and larger knuckles. So, don't know that, even if you, my email is info@myarthritislife.net. You can, interesting, Maria, your left hand's where your inflammation is. Yeah. My left wrist is where I get more pain, but my right thumb and knuckle are where I get more stiffness. So, and just, I know if you're really scared, you've seen pictures maybe online of like really severe deformities, even if your disease isn't perfectly controlled, like mine hasn't been perfectly controlled this whole time, you can still slow down the rate of deformities through doing lifestyle factors and obviously the medication. So it looks like everyone's wrapping up. I know those of you on the East Coast probably ready to go to bed. Yeah, no. I know a few people whose joints do look like that. And they are still able to do a lot of things, and so it's not like your life is over if you get severe deformities. I'm not saying to minimize it, but I'm just saying to also not like patronize the people who have those, because it can be very painful, but it doesn't mean that, you can't ever have an awesome life. Like my friend Colleen, hopefully she's okay, Mad from Minnie on Instagram. She does amazing videos of herself cooking and all this stuff. And she has a pretty severe deformity on her hand, and she's still living her life. So that's what inspires me. So yeah, living despite. Thank you all so much. I will send out this replay as soon as I can. I'll just put this in the chat one more time for the coupon code. But I appreciate you all. I hope to see some of you in the Room to Thrive group. Bye.